Steph's here to talk about home ownership, and in particular, Steph, the issue of leasehold.
Yeah, and roofs over your head.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a particular story about leasehold, so let me just explain it to you. Morning, everyone. Now, when you buy property, I'm sure lots of you know this, you either buy it with a freehold, where the property is completely yours, or with a leasehold, where you own the property, but only for a fixed period of time, although normally this can be for decades and decades. Now, the problem is the leasehold model has come up against some criticism because it can often leave homeowners with huge annual costs. So we spoke to Jo Darbyshire, who bought one near Bolton. This is her story.
We were told at the time we bought it that it was leasehold. We were told that the ground rent was £295 and that the ground rent doubles every 10 years. 11 months later, the freehold was sold on to an offshore investor, and the financial consequences of that for us were dire. I think the first time when I had that kind of penny drop moment that not only do I not own the ground that the house sits on, but I don't actually own the house because I didn't understand what leasehold really was, I felt physically sick. At no point when we bought the house did the salesperson or the conveyancing solicitor that we used, who was recommended by the developer, tell us that it was common practice to sell freeholds on. It doesn't feel like my home. I have a big mortgage on what is a wasting asset, and for me it's kind of sucked all the joy out of having this beautiful house, because it's not mine. Not one single brick of it is mine.
That's Jo Darbyshire's story there, and lots of points raised from it. I'm joined now by Mark Hayward, who is from the estate agents trade body. So, I mean, loads is to be questioned about what Jo was saying there, but first of all, how common are leasehold properties then?
Leasehold is quite common in terms of established housing. There are houses many hundreds of years old that are on leasehold, but the real issue is on the new build houses, where there are tens of thousands of properties that have been built and sold, and where the owner, or they think they're the owner, assumes they're freehold, but actually they're leasehold.
Yeah.
And the research that we did last year showed that over 60% of people who bought a new leasehold house, this is brand new, used the lawyer and financial advisor that the developer recommended. So was that independent advice? And even 40% of people who had agreed to buy one of these houses didn't know it was leasehold until they started talking to a lawyer.
Yes, which is what Jo was saying there. And I mean, so who does actually own it then when it is a leasehold?
The freeholder owns the property, as you just said. You occupy it for a specific period of time. In effect, you're renting it. The freeholder then can do with the property or the land on which it stands what it wishes. It seems that new homes developers are selling the freehold on almost immediately that the lease is commencing, so they're taking a profit on that. And then there's the other additional issues to do with ground rent. I think everybody understands ground rent, but buried in the small print is the fact that the ground rent is escalating. In some instances it's doubling every 5 years, so once it's doubled 3 or 4 times it becomes quite a sizable sum. So that's an affordability issue. Lenders are looking at that and being discouraged from lending, so you are finding people like the interviewee who is in effect trapped in that property. Yeah,
which is obviously, a great concern for her. So we've heard the government say that they want to ban it on new build homes. Labour have said today they would like to see it on all homes, that there aren't any leaseholds. Could that work then? Because how do you do it retrospectively?
Very, very difficult, because you have to go out and acquire the freehold. Now, that freehold may still remain with the developer. It may remain with an investor in this country, maybe overseas investor. So very difficult to buy it back unless you bring legislation in. And I know the Ministry of Justice is looking at this at the moment, but it's a huge issue. And how do you actually fund and legally acquire the freehold?
Yeah, and what's interesting from what you've said and what Jo said there is this idea about people not knowing. And so we've heard the regulator, the Competition and Markets Authority, are looking into whether this could be a potential mis-selling scandal. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, firstly, Competition and Markets Authority have teeth, and the government wouldn't have instructed them to investigate if they weren't really concerned. I suppose the second issue is how do you stop it? Is it a mis-selling? Certainly from the research that we've done, and this was very quantitative and qualitative research with over 1,000 people who bought a new leasehold home over the last 10 years, they weren't made aware. Now, it's difficult because when you buy a house, you tend to buy it with your heart, not necessarily with your head.
There's a lot of paperwork.
There's a lot of paperwork. When it's a new home, the house buying process is very short because there's no onward chain. So you move forward very rapidly with it, but you do need, certainly under the Consumer Protection for Unfair Trading regulations, to be made aware of anything that's detrimental.
Yeah, so for people who have a leasehold property who are watching this, because obviously we don't want to worry them, you know, what would you say to them?
Firstly, find out the real terms of your lease. Go back to the lawyer that you used, ask for a copy of the lease if you haven't already got it. Go through the small print. There are a number of action groups out there that are clubbing together to see what they can do to remedy the situation. But you just need to find out actually what you've signed up for.
Yeah, really good advice. Mark, thank you very much for your time this morning. I appreciate that. That's it for me for now.
Steph, so many issues brought up there. I'm sure lots of people will be listening with interest. So thank you very much. If they want to get in touch, they can,
Yes,
can't they?
Definitely.
Thanks both.